Mayor Bloomberg. Mike.
Interestingly, one of the more active relief efforts that we came across in the Rockaways was done by a group calling themselves Occupy Sandy Relief. And this is a group pretty much of alumni from Occupy Wall Street who started organizing really in the hours after the storm about ways that just regular members of the community could help. And we talked to one organizer named Catherine Yeager. She lives in the Rockaways, and we talked to her outside of a restaurant called the Veggie Island, which had been transformed into a relief hub. And this is part of what she had to say.
My name is Catherine Yeager. I moved down to the Rockaway in March of this last year. I am good friends with Elizabeth Grist, who owns Veggie Island. I have a bungalow down on 89th Street, and I was here for the entire hurricane. You know, it's been a whirlwind. We've been trying as much as possible to organize things. We've been putting food out as much as possible. Lots of stuff has been coming in, and I just love Rockaway, and I want it back to where it was before the storm.
So what's happening behind you right now?
What's happening behind me right now is basically we're working with Sandy Relief and OWS. The people are bringing by the carloads in clothes, food, canned goods, diapers, batteries, flashlights, everything under the sun, you know, that we kind of need right now. And so people are able to come up and sort of pick through the different things they need, be handed the things. We have warm food that we're making all the time for people. And so it's really essentially, I mean, we have cars that come in and things are dropped off, and within 30 minutes, it's all gone. You know, I mean, it's that desperate down here. People have literally lost everything. Right now, the biggest issue that we need is generators, and we need pumps because we can't get the electricity turned back on until all of the basements are pumped out. And there's still, if you walk Rockaway and you knock on any door, every single door, someone's going to need help. The water that came in is toxic. Okay, we had water from the beach. I watched the waves that morning. They were already incredibly dirty. The bay and the ocean met every single part of Rockaway during the storm. There was at least 2 feet of flooding everywhere, sometimes up to 6 or 7 feet of flooding, depending on where you lived. Everyone's been affected. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you are, every single person's been affected. And so a lot of right now is getting those basements pumped out, debris getting pulled out, you know, sweeping out huge chunks of just gunk and junk, and trying to figure out where it all goes. The boardwalk is destroyed. You know, I watched the boardwalk out my window come rushing down. The water level here got up to about 5 feet, and the winds were almost 20 miles per hour, so it looked like the ocean coming through this entire place. I watched cars rolling down the street. I mean, it was scary. And out the window, you could see the fire. You could see this huge flame of fire coming from Breezy Point. And they really, I mean, there were, I think, 80 homes lost over there, and just devastated. So the last couple of days have been very inspiring because we've had so many people coming. People are starting to realize that Rockaway was hit as bad as it was hit, and they're coming to start helping and starting to think about us a little bit more. So we'll see what happens. I don't know when we're going to get electricity back. I don't know. A lot of the people's homes are heated by baseboard heaters, and this is salt water we're talking about. So salt water is going to kill everything, you know? Anything, any kind of tools or cars or anything that runs on these different motors or electricity, when that salt water hits it, it's destroyed, you know?
Now, how are the relief efforts that are taking place here different from what we're seeing with FEMA and the National Guard down the street?
FEMA down the street, from what I understand, is handing out pieces of paper that tell you to call a phone number to get help. Yeah. Here you come and you get help immediately. We're going to start organizing and having people come down with we're encouraging people who come down and want to do manpower help. Bring your own cleaning supplies. Be your own self-sufficient cleaning person so that we can start sending you to homes and you just knock on the door and you can go in and you can start cleaning. You don't have to come here and grab cleaning supplies. You've got your own to go out. We're going to start trying to put signs up at the ends of streets and do red flags so that people can put red flags out if they do need help, so that we have a better idea of who's doing things on their own, who's okay, who's not. You know what I mean? Because it's hard. You walk around and it's just such devastation that you don't even quite know where to start. And sometimes when it's that overwhelming, you don't quite know where to go. FEMA's providing cell phone charging down there, but you gotta wait in line, I don't know, for an hour to be able to get your cell phone plugged in, you know? Besides that, I don't know what they're doing, you know? I've seen some cleanup. There was definitely a lot of the boardwalk that's been moved, but, you know, nothing that I'm sure is happening in Wall Street, or cleanup that's happening in other parts of Manhattan, you know.
Speaking of Wall Street, what is the connection with Occupy Wall Street and this relief effort?
Sandy Relief, basically, you know, Occupy Wall Street were one of the main people who started immediately knowing that Rockaway was the one that was the hardest hit. I was contacted pretty much immediately from friends of mine who are in Occupy Wall Street, like Bobby and Olivia Katz, you know, who contacted me and were reaching out and saying, we want to bring Occupy down there, we want to help with the relief effort, you know. And they've been the only ones that have really helped, you know what I mean, and really been able to make real tangible things that are going on right now. We've been open since 8 o'clock this morning. We have been giving things away all day long. People are walking away with smiles on their faces. People are able to, you know, for one night, be able to not be in a totally dark room because they've gotten flashlights. You know, they have warm clothes for their children. They have clean diapers. You know, they're going to actually be able to eat tonight.
No, Amy, that was Catherine Yeager. I spoke to her in the Rockaways on Friday outside Veggie Island, which had been transformed into this really impressive relief hub. While we were there were several cars that came by. They were able to ask for specific items, and then volunteers would search the building. In one case, someone asked for baby food, which is something that FEMA and the National Guard did not have down the street. And they had a box of baby food. They were able to run it out to the car and give it to them, and they drove off with the baby food. It's interesting. There was an article in Slate yesterday titled, "Is Occupy Wall Street Outperforming the Red Cross in Hurricane Relief?"
Well, that's an interesting question. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to Staten Island, where the Staten Island Borough President has said stop supporting the Red Cross. Stay with us. We played a clip of the Staten Island Borough President, James Molinaro, talking about the lack of American Red Cross response and the Red Cross apologizing, saying, you know, this was such a massive storm. They said afterwards, this is such a massive storm that it was difficult to actually get there. Well, Democracy Now! Has been on the ground from the beginning, and we're going to talk about who was there. We're joined by Democracy Now! Senior producer Mike Burke, Jessica Lee, our social media director who lives in Red Hook, and Steve Martinez, our video producer who lives in New Jersey, the hardest hit areas of the storm. Jessica, let's start with you, because what happened in Red Hook, and Mike, what you're talking about in speaking with the organizer for Occupy Wall Street in Rockaways, was quite stunning, the difference in the response. Jessica.
Right. So I've had sort of this triple hat the last week. I've been a resident in Red Hook, also stepping in as an organizer and also a journalist. So it's been an interesting experience. But what happened was, I think this flood in Red Hook has been a mirror for our community to see ourselves, and the organizations that were already in place, the networks, the friendships that were already there, just sprung into action right the morning after the flood. I think about 2/3 or 3/4 of our neighborhood was flooded by about 3 or 4 feet of water. So we're talking every building, basement and first floor is wet and needs to be cleaned. Almost all the businesses in Red Hook have been affected by this, and people knew that the morning after, and nobody waited for the city, no one waited to hear anything. They started organizing. The story of the Red Hook Initiative, which I think has made the news, is really beautiful because they had no plan. What I heard was that they woke up, they found that the water had come within inches of their building, and they still had power. And people started calling them, and they just took action. So that started Occupy Red Hook, connected to Occupy Sandy. We got volunteers the next day. Down in the commercial district where I live on Van Brunt Street, every single business needed help, and neighbors just started helping neighbors. There was no question of we're waiting for anything. I've still not seen the Red Cross. I've not seen the city. There's been some assistance with FEMA paperwork, but really neighbors all weekend working together with hundreds of people who bicycled to Red Hook.
And the extent of the damage in Red Hook, it's underwater.
It was underwater for only a few hours. It drained away. So what's left is very wet furniture, flooring, everything. The walls have to come down, the floors have to come down. And right across the street from my house, actually, this volunteer center sprung out. And I still am not quite sure who's organizing it, but hundreds of people were down all weekend. And they didn't have a printer, and so I was printing flyers for people to canvass the neighborhood and talk to residents about their needs, whether it was food, medical, whether they needed certain tools, and they would bring that information back. They'd reorganize, send volunteers back out. And this is all happening without really anybody knowing who's in charge.
So you have the